In today's video, we are talking about Stasis Warlock in Season 23 or Season of the Witch, and talking about some buffs that it has received and if that makes it S tier. I did a Warlock subclass tier list a little while back, and I rated it C tier, which a lot of you did not like, which is totally understandable. So we're going to talk about the changes, talk about why I think it's a lot better now, and talk about what I've been using to really get the most out of this subclass and how you can get the most out of this subclass in your 6v6 or even more sweaty environments like comp or trials. So first thing first, let's just touch on the buffs real quickly to make sure we're all on the same page. And so pulling it up here, starting with Penumbral Blast, you can see they increase the detonation size when impacting environment. So this isn't going to be the overall detonation size when just aiming directly at a target, but more if it hits like a wall or hits the floor. And so I think this makes it actually quite good, because now if you're aiming more towards someone's feet, even though you're trying to hit them directly, if you miss and impact the floor, you actually have a better chance of freezing them. So I really like this change. Frost Pulse, more consistent against fast moving targets for those strand hunters out there, I'm assuming. And so overall, I don't really use Frost Pulse, nor do I recommend it, so I'm not gonna really talk about that too much. This is the big one. Stasis Grenades. Glacier Grenade had its cooldown reduced from 152 to 121, and then the cooldown penalties for Dustfield Grenade and Cold Snap Grenade when using Bleak Watcher or the Stasis Turret now are matching Glacial Grenade. So it's kind of in a little of a buff for the Stasis Turret, which I'm gonna talk a lot about. And then Cold Snap Grenade, overall, just what you need to know, it's gonna be a little bit more consistent, and I think it somewhat is, but we're gonna talk about how to improve that. And then overall, for like the fragments, they did remove either any stat penalties, they added some stat penalties, but basically I think overall it's kind of a net improvement in terms of the stat distribution you can have for running Stasis Warlock. And then lastly, when an opponent is frozen, the special ammo weapon damage bonus has been increased by 5%. Not super noticeable, but again, something there to talk about. And so talking about these changes and talking about what I recommend running, you really want to be utilizing two things when running Stasis Warlock to really take it into that S tier mode. And what I think that's going to be is, one, Osmiomancy gloves. So basically gives you improved cold snap, makes sure cold snaps track like 35% farther or something like that, and again makes them just way more aggressive and faster, as well as giving you two of those and getting grenade energy back when you freeze targets with them. And so the benefit of that is it gives you a lot more utility than just running Stasis Warlock without the Osmiomancy gloves, because now you get two cold snap grenades. So you can use you can use them both for the Bleak Watcher turret, or you can use one to freeze a target and then one for a turret. And overall, your grenade uptime, you're gonna have your grenade basically every round, depending on what your stat distribution is in a mode like comp or trials, which is huge. Having your grenade every round is absolutely huge, especially when you can freeze, or again, use your the Stasis Turret to keep people off the point. And that's what I really want to talk about for a second. I really think one of the best ways to use Stasis Warlock is to use Bleak Watcher. Bleak Watcher, especially with modes like Countdown Rush, modes like Dominion, which I think it's called in Trials, where you're capturing a point, having a turret that can just be an annoyance, be a distraction on the point, and really keep people from progressing without having to like spend some time shooting it, can make all the difference. You'll see hopefully in some of the clips here that a lot of the kills I get, the enemy's not shooting me, they're shooting the turret. They're shooting the turret, they're trying to kill the turret. They're so distracted by it that it allows me to move a lot more freely, as well as kind of kill them while they're distracted by something else. And so I find this incredibly powerful, and it's really all about how you place those turrets. I feel like I could do a whole video just on Stasis turret placement. Maybe I will, but that is not for today. But my point being is, if you place your turrets right to where basically the enemy has to be in the turret's line of sight to engage it, meaning they're going to take some damage from it, they're going to get slowed. And so it really just gives you the upper hand in terms of distracting your enemy, slowing them down, and making it harder for them to move and get out of dodge if you're hurting them. And so overall, there's so many benefits to the Stasis Turret, and I think the Stasis Turret, the Bleak Watcher turret, is really what makes this subclass now S tier, especially since they lowered that cooldown so much. And then again, I highly recommend pairing it with Osmiomancy gloves. I'm a big Apathettic aspect fan, but with these gloves, I absolutely had a blast running this subclass and that combination. And because again, that way it's like I don't use my turret and I'm just like only using my turret. I still have that backup grenade if I need to throw a cold snap and push in to get after I get a freeze. Having those options when playing Stasis is huge. And I think the biggest downfall and part of the reason I rated Stasis C tier in the past and still can find it to perform C tier at times is because of the inconsistency of cold snap, especially with latency and when people are laggy. That's when they perform at their worst because they're trying to track the player and the player's just all over the place in terms of latency. And so anytime a player's lagging or there's high latency involved, which there definitely can be in Destiny, the cold snaps just typically fall off significantly in terms of their performance. And so that's something you want to be mindful of, and maybe that's where again that turret will be a little bit more handy. And so those are all the reasons why I really think Stasis is going to really be S tier this season. And because of the cooldown changes, because of the reduced in stat penalties that we receive and had removed on Stasis for Warlock and just all Stasis subclasses in general. And so all that combined really puts Stasis into, I think, a really good spot where it's super powerful, but it's not overpowered, and it still does have quite a high skill ceiling and does take a little bit more mastery than some other subclasses, but again, it is quite good. And of course there is still the Shadebinder super. So now we've kind of broken down like why Stasis is so good. Let's kind of get into the overall build and like what I recommend running from an aspects and fragments standpoint. As for our aspects and fragments, of course, we want to rock Cold Snap. Not going to dive too much into that. And then I recommend running Ice Flare Bolts. I feel like this is absolutely non-negotiable in terms of what you want to be running for the subclass, because again, shattering a frozen targets spawns the Seekers, which can just get you multiple freezes at the same time, allows you to chain kills together really quickly. Of course, Bleak Watcher, which I've already talked at length about. In terms of the fragments, I recommend Whisper of Conduction because you get plus 10 resilience, plus 10 intellect, so really great for our stat distribution. And then for Whisper of Endurance, so slow, you apply targets last longer, also gives you plus 10 strength, so you can get that penumbral blast a little bit quicker. I have been trying Whisper Rending primary weapons to increase damage to stasis crystals and frozen targets. I do this because if I get a freeze from further away, I just want to try to do a little bit more damage to my targets when they're frozen without always having to push in and kind of give up my positioning. I don't know if I love this one, I'll be honest. If I were to sub one out, I'd probably switch it for like Whisper of Hedrons, which increases weapon stability, aim assist, airborne effectiveness, mobility, resilience, and recovery after freezing a target with stasis. So definitely a lot of benefits there. So if you don't like that one, this would be definitely the one I would sub it out for. And then Whisper of Torment, gain grenade energy each time you take damage from targets. And I think this all just supplements getting our cold snaps back as quickly as possible to throw our Bleak Watchers or our cold snaps as often as possible. So pretty straightforward there. And again, recommend running Osmiomancy Gloves. Please, please, please run it. And again, if you have conditional finality, this does pair really well with Stasis, just because when you get those kills with the Stasis pellets and the freezes, that will also spawn Ice Flare Bolts or that additional Seeker, which is just makes a conditional finality even better if that's what it needed. But overall, as you can kind of see my stat distribution here, I would prefer to have this resilience at 6, especially with all the thorns, but is what it is. But I recommend trying to get around 8 discipline for your grenade. I found that to be a really nice spot to be getting my grenade basically every round, assuming nothing else happens in terms of other ways to reduce my cooldowns. And then I also like running a high intellect, because then if you play well, you're gonna get your Shadebinder pretty close to like bubble and well, but do not challenge a well with your Shadebinder, because right now it just does not freeze them at all. So run away fast. And then 5, I found the sweet spot for Penumbral Blast to get at a pretty decent pace, and I felt like I had it pretty consistently. So overall, this is what I recommend. I'm really happy with the Stasis changes that they've made. They feel like a nice sweet spot, and again, not taking us back to like when Stasis was overpowered, but still landing us in a place where now I feel a lot more comfortable saying that Stasis Warlock, even for your average player, is gonna be closer to S tier versus you having an S tier player making it look S tier, if that makes sense. But let me know what you guys think. Have you ran any of the Stasis subclasses or Stasis Warlock? What do you think of the changes, and what are you running? Let me know in the comments down below.